Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite dark sorcerer here. And tonight, I want to talk to you a little bit about lawful and unlawful statutes, specifically that of spiritualism versus the mundane. Now, to get into what I want to talk about today, I want to take you through some pivotal, some very prime real estate, I guess you can say, throughout time. We know the witch trial acts from about 10th century to about the 14th century. But what about the legal laws? We know that in 1542, Parliament passed the Witchcraft Act and defined it. If you were found guilty of it, you were found to be slaughtered, basically butchered. Think of it as if you were found guilty of witchcraft, you were put to death. You were burned at the stake. You were hung from a tree. You were drowned in a river. Thrown off a bridge like you'd see in Hollywood. Now, what's interesting here is 513 witches that were put on trial between 1560 and the 1700s. 112 of them were executed. In 1717, overall, 500 people were killed. In 1736, Parliament passed an act repealing the vows against witchcraft. In 1824, Parliament passed the Vagrancy Act under fortune telling, astrology, and spiritualism. Okay? And what's interesting about this is it became a punishable offense. Basically, it was associated with fraud. Okay? A lot of people back then believed that it wasn't about some message from a divine being, such as a demon, a jinn, or the Orisha, the Loa, or demonic entities. It was basically you were a fraud and you were arrested, tried, and convicted and spent a certain amount of time in a prison. In 1951, the act became known and associated with the Fraudulent Mediums Act, which was appealed in 2008 on the 26th of May. Okay. Now, when we think of this, we think of all the negativity, the unlawful aspects of how the world, the mundane world, views practitioners of sorcery. Okay. But what about if you were a practitioner of, say, JCI or maybe Judaism, Satanism, or even voodoo? Okay. What about all this stuff? Well, let's take a look at this lawful stuff. Now, we know that when we look at, say, for an example, things of ethics, the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you put your intent out there into the world so that they see you for who you are. Okay? Now, keep in mind, this aspect may anger a lot of people because it's things that they don't agree with. They'll get butthurt. But hey, just because they're not of your religion doesn't mean they're vital or valuable knowledge. So let's start off with the JCI. The JCI, the Judo Christian Institutions, JCI for short. When we look at this, we have what is known as the Ten Commandments. Now, according to the church, there are 666 laws dubbed down into these 10 little statutes. In Judaism, you have what is known as the collection of Sharia laws. Okay? This is basically the same exact thing as the Ten Commandments, just in a little bit different way. Things like prostrating, how you dress, what you eat. Let's look at it as how you present yourself to your God. Okay, how do you associate with them? How do you represent yourself in your community as a Hebrew, a Jew, or even a Christian? Muslims do the same exact thing. They have what is known as the five pillars, but yet the entire overall Quran is one big book of not only sorcery, demonolatry, but it also deals with ethics, presentability. And it's interesting because in Satanism, we have this, you have the same exact thing. You have the nine satanic statements, the nine satanic sins, you have the 11 satanic rules of the earth, you have the infernal maxim, and then you have the 21 satanic points. In Luciferian Satanism, you have the 11 adversarial doctrines. Okay? And it's interesting because even in voodoo, you have ethics. Ethics in voodoo. Very interesting because voodoo literally is associated with Catholicism, but it's also a spiritual foundation. And it's interesting because when we look at the rituals of one's life, the quote and unquote understanding, okay, we look at it within the abstract versus the practical, okay, or the practices of ritual in one's life. Here we understand the fact that when you dress, you you've heard the term dress for success, right? Now, have you ever wondered why so many of these JCI practitioners are always wearing suits when they go to church, but yet when they go anywhere outside of church or outside of the workplace, they're casual? I'm talking jeans, a t-shirt. Okay. Maybe their work clothes, they may work in a bank or some form of business where they have to wear a suit, or they work at, say, a moving company where they wear jeans and a t-shirt, or they work in a section where presentability, like, say, the military, the armed forces, okay, they have three categorizations of clothing. They have Class A, Class B, and Class C. Okay. Class A is where they go when they go to formal, the formal balls, and when they go around like to the White House or the government buildings, they always show up in the with the jacket, the suit and tie, the spiffy, pressed jean, pants and the shiny little shoes. Okay. The belt all polished. It's that ethics, it's that presentability. Okay. Satanists do the same thing. Voodoo practitioners do the same thing. And it's very interesting because it comes down to the ethics of your religion, your philosophical practices. So therefore, when we look at the abstract versus the practical, what's the difference between them? It is your understanding of how you present yourself. And it's interesting because there's actually a couple of things that I want to put forth here. Number one, the Hangan. Okay, number one, they're knowledgeable. They're male practitioners of voodoo. They're kind of like the witch doctor. Okay, highly trained, highly respected, highly loved. But yet, if you look at the Mambo, Mambos are very similar to the Hungan, but they're only the opposite sex. They're female. Okay? But here's the kicker. It is said that women are more emotional. They're more, how should I say this? What was that term an old friend of mine once used? Oh, right. Finkel. Finkel creatures. They're easily breakable. They're easily, made to cry or whatever. They're chaotic, chaos even. So they're Finkel. You got to be patient and understanding with them, right? So a mambo can be one of two things. They could be highly disciplined, highly motivated within their spirituality and their practices. But yet, just like the Hangan, you have that darker side, that side where they can be highly feared. They can be highly emotional, rude, even. Okay? So if a Hangan or a Membo is ignorant and negative, people are going to flat out ignore them. They're not going to have anything to do with them. It's kind of like some of these loudmouth wannabes that are out there. Okay, within the practices, they make a big fuss, a big splash, but they disappear as quickly as they appear. While on the other front, you have those that still remain, have been practitioners, but they don't have that mental discipline to control themselves. Okay? When you look at anger and rage, somebody pisses you off in the supermarket. Do you just go up and bitch slap them across the face? Or do you just look at them and smile and go, it's all good? Why? Because you know you're going to be in your altar room in just a little while, where you can have that mental image of that individual who wronged you and you curse them into damnation. Okay? So you can sit there and be a tyrant, a child in a man's body or a woman's body, but people are going to see you differently if you act like that. But if you sit there like as an adult, you carry on those conversations and you treat people with respect. You treat people with integrity, okay? Being equals through humbleism. We see where you're going to get a lot more ground. More doors are going to open with honey than with a stinger, okay? And then you have what is known as the Bokor. The Bokor is much like the warlock of the tradition of voodoo, but in this case, a warlock is considered an outcast, the omega factor within witchcraft, paganism, and neo-paganism, and all those traditions. Kind of like the Darok is known as a dark oak in Druidism, going all the way back to ancient Gaelic systems. So when we look at it, they're viewed as evil. Okay, they're the only difference is that a Bokor is one who is not initiated into a system of sorcery, whereas a warlock has been trained. He just chooses to study what fits him. Okay, he's able to heal or curse, the sleight of hand tricks type stuff, the illusionist aspects of magic. And it's very interesting to see the views of the Mayamberos and Santeria and Pero Mayambi versus the Bokor with the K, not the C. The C is known as a witch doctor. So be careful about that. Remember, it comes down to the spelling and the practices. So when we get into this, they're seen as evil because they choose to put themselves out to be hired. They're hired guns. Think of the old bodyguards. The bodyguards. Basically, all they are is armed guards. They're hired for a job, just like your basic contractor if you are needing a home built or somebody to come in and fix your stove. Okay, how do they present themselves? Are they neat? Are they clean cut? Are they dressed in a uniform? Or okay, these type of things is how we look at people today. So again, these laws, these rules, don't just apply to the physical realm. It also appears within the purity of how you deal with the spiritual. It is said to master the world, you must first master yourself. Control your emotions, your mind, quiet the mind, and the body must follow. Here, the Ten Commandments, the Sharia laws, the satanic statements, and all these other things. It's how to keep yourself pure, how to keep yourself in a very well known, respected perception. Remember, the eye of the beholder is the apple, correct? Think about it. The apple is in the eye of the beholder. Wisdom, truth, beauty, the whole kit and caboodle is in the eye of the beholder. So, therefore, the way you present yourself to spirits, into civilization, not just other practitioners, is showing respect, honor, and integrity. Okay? Not just how you present yourself to these spirits, but how you approach it. Do you listen to what is being said to you? Do you understand the lessons being put forth? Are you self motivated to do the work that you're being hired to do? You see, people for centuries, hundreds of thousands of years, have gone to the shamans, the necromancers, the practitioners of magic. I'm talking mages and sages. I'm talking the strega, the esha, the hexa, okay, for services. And depending on the culture, they were highly revered but and or highly respected. Some cultures, like in the African tribals, these medicine men, these sorcerers and sorceresses, these spiritualists, lived right next to the king's hut. No move would be done without first consulting them. In other parts of the world, such as Greece, European countries, it's amazing to see how going from a respected central location within a tribe or a village, we now see these practitioners sitting just on the outskirts of a village or a town. They were looked down on, but they were highly feared. People paid them for their services, and those who could not pay, they ended up trading, okay, fish, furs, something valuable for something better, like a spell or a ritual to be done. But then later on, you see the image as being evil. Therefore, they're set out in the boonies. Don't go into those woods. Baba Yaga is there and will snatch you if you don't do your homework. Or child sacrificing, human sacrificing, animal sacrificing. You see, this is how it developed, which is why so many people worldwide believe the lies that the church tells them. Do you know how many people did I talk to me about my ways as being a sorcerer? You're going to go to hell, right? You're going down a bad road. How so? Does the church not do fundraisers? Does the church not get hired to perform rituals of various sorts, such as weddings, funerary rites, have suppers to raise money? Every time you have a service, that till is out, wanting 30% or 10% of your overall income. Is that not performing for a fee? Is that not working, being a hired gun for your community? Just like a shaman or a necromancer, a black magician, a sorcerer, a mage, a sage? Think about that for just a moment. Bokors do the exact same work that a hungan and a mambo does, just like a papa or a mama, depending if it's the Dominican Republic or that of Haiti. And it comes down to the palero or the mamberos, if you're into Santeria or Pelo Mayambi. Okay? So it comes down to your image. I sat there with numerous people. We went over history, mythology, went over their Bibles, and I showed them exactly where this material came from, what time and era it was practiced in. And you know what? I find it interesting. Some of these individuals, some of these Wiccans are now Christian. Some of the Christians, there was a Catholic who's now a Wiccan. And you know what's even more interesting? Some of these churchgoers that I've sat down with, listened to, helped, they've said I've helped them more in a 10-minute consultation than they've done in 10 years of being at the church, worshiping a god, a deity that hasn't helped them. Ministers don't help you. And yet, those of us on the left-hand path that do were considered evil, outcasts. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is not a get-rich-quick type of path. It is a lonely path, one of a hermit and the Hierophant, the magician. And it's interesting because a lot of times when you get on social media, you see people making a big splash. It may look good because they dress up in fancy clothes, but in reality, they're in the slums, just like you, just like me. I may wear fancy clothes, class B clothing in military terms, the shirt, the items of sorcery. But you know what? I live in a one-bedroom apartment with my better half and my son. I'm paying over $1,000 for a one-bedroom apartment. Because every time you work more, that rent goes up. It's not all fun and games. It's not all fairy tale happy endings. You don't always get what you want out of life, especially if you're a practitioner. You can sit there and continue to put out books, or you can continue to sit there and put out product if that's your goal. But sooner or later, you got to give into that spiritualism, not just the physical. This is a balance. It is a path working of both spiritualism and balance of reality. And it's interesting because there are three aspects that I want you to understand. There's the universe's way. There's the deity's way. There's your way. And then on top of that, there's the client's way. Right there, each one has their own techniques, their own needs, their own desires. But it is how you present yourself in those cases that will keep you clean, pure, of heart, humble. Look at the JCI Bible, the mainstream Bible, the King James Bible, or the New King James Bible. It is said that you show me your good work, your works, your dead works, and I will show you my good deeds and my good works. It is also said that my yoke is light, meaning all my burdens have been laid down. About a week ago, I did a video on the apple, about how men and women are viewed from a Christian perspective, not just a religious perspective. But the last verse that I gave in that was that the axe was already at the root of the tree, ready to be cut down. Why? Because when you confess, when you lay your burdens down and you learn to be truthful with who you are, you begin to master yourself. You begin your journey into self-mastery, self-evolution. And as you do, you are developing the spiritual and social skills of a practitioner. And as you continue on, you're going to become more and more powerful within your sorcery. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. They think it's all about putting on that bad guy image, like Anton Szandor LaVey. Think about that for just a minute. The twisted humor that he had, keeping a lion in, everybody knew it was there except for that one guest that freaked out. Why? Because it was amusing. It was that invited guest's fear that brought everybody else gratification. You see, it's that image. He wanted to play the bad guy to the church. That is why the COS still exists today as atheists. Why call yourself a Satanist and a devil worshiper if you don't believe in an actual devil? If you don't believe in actual magic and spiritualism? You see, atheists, they're hypocrites in that case. But my point is this: when you learn to present yourself with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, then you will have the full grasp of the titles that you have earned. Until then, you are an acolyte, a neophyte, an adept. You are a trainee within the sources of magic. And until you master them, each level, the pillars, the 5 pillars, only then can you rise up and be a threat to the world. Have a good one.